Gung Ho is a fairly odd episode, I think, in Power Ranger canon. I can actually see in this episode stripes of Happy Birthday, Zach, stripes of Life's Masquerade, the previous episode, which makes it feel like a two-parter, but it's not, which is very strange. But it also feels like a precursor to a lot of future season episodes. This episode, they don't spend much time morphed, and I'm curious about that. It's either a function of the super putties being an entirely American thing, which I referenced. I'd get to that, and I think it bears talking about a little bit, because mechanically it's very interesting, but it's also like narratively interesting. Um, but this also feels kind of a proto for all of the future episodes that don't necessarily have the same themes, but the amount of time that the Rangers spend morphed is very evident. Like it influenced, um, I'd argue SPD, probably Lightspeed Rescue, definitely Wild Force and Mega Force, and it's one of those interesting things where the pacing of this episode is what kind of makes me struggle a bit. Also, the message of the episode. In pacing terms, this episode is essentially about Jason and Tommy needing to work together, which would be fine as a resolution to an issue if that issue had existed before at this point. At this point, this is the fifth episode outside of the Green with Evil saga, where we have Tommy as a good ranger, but this is also the fifth episode where he's felt other. Even in Morph presentation, not just because of the Golden Shield, because of where he's placed in the morphing lineup, because he doesn't go last, because he's the sixth member, so he should go last, but he morphs first. Um, every single episode he was in as a good ranger up to this point, he's been by himself essentially practicing. Like that's what we know him for. That's all I know about him really. I only know more things because I've seen other episodes as a kid. Um, it seems odd and manufactured. This show has a really weird, interesting problem in that they want you to favor, as a viewer, some Rangers over the other. But then episodes like Gung Ho and episodes in Zio will expressly tell you they're all equal in some way. Like the idea that Jason and Tommy have to be in sync, but Jason's competitiveness again is going to rear its ugly head, but also Tommy kind of goads it, like not in a bad way. Tommy's actually a much better partner than Jason in this, but Tommy kind of lets Jason get competitive. He doesn't really push back on it, but everyone else does, which makes me think that it doesn't bother Tommy quite so much. In fact, Tommy seems to like thrive a little bit on the competitiveness of it. I don't know if that's supposed to be they have similar energies, so that's why it works, but like there's actually not that much in the Ninja Team finals that only them and Vulcan Skull's Mystery Ninja Team that they stole from like the Foot Clan or something fight each other. It's the only two teams we see. I guess it's why it's called the final. I don't know. Um, Vulcan Skull have learned a lot about ninja-ing, I guess. They definitely know things like they know what a shinai is. So I don't know. Um, the episode goes real ham on making sure you understand that Jason is in the wrong here, but nothing Jason does feels in the wrong. In fact, this like feels like the first time he's asserting himself in a positive way in quite a long time, like probably since Jason's battle in the Green with Evil saga. Um, I don't like the message. I don't like how it's sent out. Um, like I don't know if you've watched the episode recently, if you've done it as an adult, but there's something very much like everything we know about the Power Rangers is counterintuited in this episode because there's definitely a ranking of capability. Any episode with Billy specifically will tell you there's a power ranking going on in this universe in some way. And every team tries to deny it or tries to mitigate it, but it's sort of true. It's sort of like the unspoken veiled misogyny and racism issues, but those were alive in the 90s everywhere, so the Rangers were not exempt from that sort of thing. Um, it's not as much here. In some ways, this is a 90s utopia that Angel Grove has, but in other ways, that sort of utopia has a bit of a Twilight Zone feel to it. Um, Also, both Zerianger lettering on the new kind of Neo super putty weapons that were, I don't think we ever see them again. And the design is definitely is straight out of Zerianger, and it's written on the side of them. And the Frankenstein monster they destroyed last episode are both here. So um, there's some continuity issues where some of it definitely the introduction of Titanus does work. This is I thought it was just going to be a fetch quest, but this is the first time where the fetch quest definitely had some like narrative plot use, and that they actually it's sort of like is when they have to go to Dulcea's planet in the film, right? Um, yeah, but they spend a lot of time at the Ninja Team finals at the end, like a lot of time. They don't spend the best part of this episode is the time that the four Rangers not on the quest fight the Super Putties before they're in together. There's also an interesting moment because there's two parts to this fight. There's not a monster of the week. There's just super putties, which I think is an appropriate scaling from Life's Masquerade to this. It really does feel like a two-part episode. Um, yeah, there's an appropriate power scaling there. The I can't tell if it's Sentai footage or not. I do think that it's really good footage for fight choreography, and it's interesting seeing this design on the putties when we've seen putties like this, but in shadow and shade that were more rocky and looked like onyx putties or something like that in much earlier episodes. Like No Clowning Around has it. And so I don't know if the super putties are them trying to upgrade the putties in the American version. I do like that these weapons seem to have a teleport capability because they don't explode. It's more like they teleport, and I'm going to steal that for my games, just straight up because I think that's really cool. Very convenient, very useful. Uh, yeah, the message bugs me because the idea that you can't be competitive in a positive way is very kind of strange and especially antithetical to some of the Power Rangers series where competition is what makes some characters thrive, like in a positive way. The idea that uh, martial arts is only about selfless acts, virtue, and like the bravery of defense is a point of view. Maybe it's because they were trying to really introduce this and get a grab hold in America in a way the Karate Kid didn't. I guess maybe it works that way. But it's such an odd, heavy-handed message in a show that has not to this point had much of that. They had a couple of heavy-handed messages and just like general teamwork. Um, this is like the second heavy-handed message, outside of them getting like their powers in Day of the Dumpster. And I don't know, it landed higher on the list than maybe it will stay. Because I have to think about it a little bit before I like cement it where it is. Because there was just the pacing of it is so odd. I can't tell if it's because they felt that they weren't paying the actors enough, so they had to give them more screen time, or they wanted to prove they could do the martial arts outside. Also, they're shirtless for some reason, which is not bad. It's like, okay, why? This is the first episode where we get to actually see the transfer of the dragon shield, which we don't see in the American version hardly ever, and I don't think we saw much in the Sentai version hardly ever, actually. It's weird to see the Green Ranger without the gold. I think the gold works with the green so well. It's weird to see it when he doesn't have it. Like my brain can't process it. It just makes him look top heavy like a Funko that they didn't measure properly. Um, I don't know. I don't mind Jason's competitive nature. It's actually nice to like know something about him. Because I feel like that's all I've learned. And maybe there's a subtle choice there in Jason being deferent and letting other people take the spotlight is like about leadership, but it's too subtle if that's what it is. Like it doesn't seem like he's not speaking up to this point. He hasn't really spoken up at all, and this is the first episode in a long time where he's been competitive. But I don't think that's bad, and a good portion of these Team Ninja finals that a lot of people show up to cheer about, which is also there's a weird voyeuristic angle to the like the last 10 minutes of the episode. Um, yeah, God, I don't hate this episode. It's not like as bad as Big Sisters was by any stretch. It's not as bad as Dark Warrior was. It's certainly not as bad as the first version of Food Fight. I'm hoping the second version of Food Fight, because it actually has two places on the Power Ranger Google rankings, because I guess they had two episodes of it. So I'm hoping it comes back and it does better. I don't know. Gung Ho is also interesting because we have one Monster of the Week episode left, and then we have a double parter, an Island of Illusion. So Gung Ho also narratively doesn't really sit well in power scaling in some ways. It feels like Island of Illusion should be the place where they got the super putty power up things that I don't think we're going to see much of. We'll see if I'm wrong. Again, I record these one at a time, so if I'm wrong in one episode, then I can retract it later or just kind of ignore my wrongness in some ways. Yeah, so the super putties are an interesting thing, and I think super putties works in American Power Rangers. I think it may work better in Super Sentai, actually, in some ways. They don't feel like they're in response to Tommy's defection, though. Like, I would like them narratively better if Super Putties were punishment and a direct response that afflicted Tommy more than the others. Like, there's an interesting narrative angle here, pretty much after Tommy is not brainwashed anymore, where everything Rita does leading up to Green Candle can be about, punishing, sort of thing. Um, Rita's not in this episode much, honestly. Like, she's very much a voyeur in her own machinations in some ways. And again, haven't seen Scorpina since the one episode she was in, so I'm curious. I know she comes back during Will of Misfortune. I wonder if they will even note that she has not been there for several episodes, even like in the background course with the other baddies. Uh, in some ways, watching this as adult doesn't spoil it, but it really, really showcases how much this is a show piecemealed together from another show. In some ways, it's like if Home Improvement was also Everybody Loves Raymond in some ways, or King of Queens, because like the man-child harried wife trope is really, really running through all those things. Um, Also, Trini mentions gung ho being Chinese for teamwork, and that's not a thing. I put it into Google Translate and I did a quick Google search, so I could be wrong because I didn't think so. And also, there's like not even a Chinese character for it that Google Translate recognizes. So I could be wrong, but I guess it's nice to know that either Trini is Chinese or has studied Chinese philosophies. So I guess I learned something about Trini this episode. Um, like I said, the other part of this episode is Life's a Masquerade sort of paired off all the characters, and all the characters feel paired off again in this episode, but in different combinations. So you get Billy who pairs off with Zach at the beginning to help Jason and Tommy train, who are a pair. You get Kimberly and Trini together, who are a pair, and then they get attacked and they're a pair, and then Billy switches so that he can defend Trini, even though she's only prone at the moment. And then Zach does a kind of solo thing, which is fine. Um, the fight sequences in this episode are really good. And I don't know if the YouTube version that I watched was the reignition version. I tried to watch the original and avoid the reignition version in case they're kind of cleaning stuff up. But if so, then they missed the Zerianger symbols on the side of the. By the way, there were only five weapons in that box. It looked like I couldn't tell. Maybe there was a sixth one and I missed it. But I think it's the same box that the power crystals are going to be held in by Goldar when they turn the adults into when they turn the adults and at the end of like I think it's season one or something like that. And they demand the power crystals. It looks like the same chest, essentially. Um, Yeah. It was better than Life's a Masquerade in some ways. I will say the Super Putties do feel like they are a thing that has to be grappled with. And I was a little reticent about the fetch quest because this is the third or fourth fetch quest one or two rangers have had to go out to do since the start of the series. So at this point, we've seen it quite a bit. Um, I think this is just about how many episodes there are in this season, because season one, quite famously, again, has 65 episodes. I'm not even sure if I'm counting doubles. I'm not sure if any of those episodes include the VHS like Christmas episodes that I'm also going to do, because I think those deserve a place on the list. Yeah, it's higher on the list than maybe I would have put it earlier, because the message is so heavy-handed, but it's a beautiful choreography. It's at least as good, even though it seems slightly more epic to do it at a carnival setting, it's at least as good choreography in the fight sequencing as Happy Birthday, Zach had and No Clowning Around had. It's pretty good. I would argue maybe it's even as good as High Five, where they have the cactuses in the desert and they do that spinny thing they've never done again. I'm also waiting for them to use the power of one morph again, because I feel like especially episodes like this, they did not try very much in order to deal with the super putties, waiting for Jason and Tommy to bring back the super weapons that Zordon conveniently knew about, then didn't say anything about for a long time. Um, yeah, so yeah, so it's is it a sequel to Life's Masquerade? Was it intended to be? Because really, both of them. It's interesting because there's only a 2-day skip from Gung Ho to the next episode, Wheel of Misfortune. So essentially, in a week period, you got three episodes in a row, and two of them were kind of Halloween themed. In a way, Life's Masquerade is definitely, I would argue Gung Ho with people in the ninja costumes and the transferring of the dragon shield kind of give it a masquerade vibe. So maybe. Um, there's no decorations left up from the party, so time has skipped, though how much is anyone's guess. But Wheel of Misfortune is coming up, which I love the name of this episode. This is going to be a Kimberly episode, it looks like, and I'm kind of excited about that because what is it called? Foul Play in the Sky is actually currently still ranked at number three in the top episodes list. Um, And there's ways in which Kim really grows throughout the series to really care about what she does in the capacity of being a ranger and the responsibilities as such. And I think that story is very successful, and her romance with Tommy is one of the things that kept this show going. Long past its needed time to like move forward a little bit from it. But yeah, so thank you for joining me here for episode 26, Gung Ho. Um, doesn't mean what Trini thinks it means, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I do like there's a lot of togetherness in this episode. Tommy, outside of Rangerdom, has been fully integrated, and I think maybe this Titanus introduction episode kind of marks the period where now he's going to fight more with them. I'm hoping that's what does, because if so, then it may go higher just for that marking, or it may stay where it is. But coming up next time, we'll have Wheel of Misfortune. I hope you have a great week. And of course, as Zordon likes to say, unless he's holding back information from things that he knows about conveniently, may the power protect you.